He just looks so forlorn compared to, you know, when you see a whole colony of them, you know, running around, chattering and carrying on.
Is that,
he's got to go back.
Yeah, he's got to go home.
Gareth, I hear you're just back from the zoo in a close encounter with Happy Feet. How was that?
Pretty good. Bird looks really good. Yeah, I mean, he's moving his head around and he's, you know, wagging his tail. I said, oh, do they wag their tails like dogs, you know, when they're happy? And the vet said, no, he's going to have a boo. Oh.
So what's that? Is that like a dog? When he wags that tail, is he happy or angry? Oh, it's just
I can tell you it prefers shaved ice to block ice because it can do that, make itself a little burrow. I just thought you'd like to know that. But no, its health seems to be fine. It's still pooing out sand, so it's still moving it through, but they showed us some x-rays, and so, you know, its intestines are nowhere near as swollen with stuff as they were, and it's moved down, so it's just cleaning out the last of it. So yeah, I mean, it seems to be in, I mean, it's pretty weak, but it's, you know, it's doing that with its head and all that sort of stuff, so no, it looks great.
Gareth, what are the options for the penguin now? Is it a possibility that he'll stay at the zoo?
No, I think they'll keep him for his recuperation, which we don't really know, but it could be a couple of months. But they won't keep him permanently. They had a big meeting on it yesterday with all their experts in New Zealand plus Lincolns from overseas. So they've got a really good collaborative team working on this thing, and the general consensus where they have really reached is to get the bird better and, you know, beef him up a bit because he's a bit emaciated with all that's happened, and then transport him south of New Zealand down to really the fringe of the area where these penguins actually reach, because, you know, the first 5 years of these emperor penguins' lives they spend basically at sea, which I didn't really know. You know, I'm learning something on this every day, these things. And this little guy is, and they still don't know the sex of it, by the way, but is 3.5, I think, 3.5. So he's got another 18 months to 2 years at sea yet. So they will put him in the zone. These birds swim an enormous distance, right? Far more than I had thought. I thought they just went up and down the channel, you know, and back to on the ice down in the McMurdo Sound, but they don't do that. They actually travel enormously, but it's normally just round the continent, around Antarctic. So they stay in those icy waters, pop up onto the ice, have a rest, and back into the water, and so on. So this one just got his directions wrong, but in fact the distance he's travelled isn't unusual for a penguin of that age.
Do they normally hang out in groups and this guy just got split off, or do they just travel around by themselves?
I think it's a bit of both. I don't actually know the answer to that. I mean, I know they're definitely colonised when they're back on the ice, but in terms of their navigation at sea, I don't know the answer to that. So yeah, I mean, one of the big issues with the bird has been the worry that it might have picked up some diseases, you know, along the way, and, you know, had a one-night stand on the beach at Macquarie or something, who knows. And so therefore, if they were, you know, if it's had cross relationships with other types of penguins, other breeds, and picked up something and goes back into the colony, back on the continent, well, that could be terrible, you know. So that's why I sort of thought, well, taking it back is ruled out then, surely. You can't take it back under, but what they're telling us is that because they're at sea for so long, and because of that big distance between the edge of the zone they roam and back on the continent, that acts really as a quarantine. So by the time it gets back, it will have been cleansed. I mean, they obviously are going to check it for all the major things. So it looks like they're going to drop it off at about, they're talking about 49 degrees south. We know the birds get up around the Antarctic Peninsula on the other side, which is about 55 degrees. So, I mean, for me, I would have, you know, I'm going to talk and see if we can get them a bit further south than that, just to give them a better chance.
What do they think about his chances of surviving and becoming part of a normal colony again?
Oh, pretty good. The sort of cardinal rule with wildlife is get them back into their natural habitat as soon as you can. And so, I mean, obviously when he was up on the Peka Peka beach and he was in really good condition when he landed, and you know, I mean, they were hoping, he just decided it was time to skedaddle, you know, and back into the water, which we all know he didn't do and that. So I think the thinking is if they can get it back to good health here, they've got to feed it fish, get it back to good health, then it'll have every chance.
There's been some talk about a GPS system being put on the penguin to track his journey. What's that about?
I think they'd be quite interested in doing two things, putting a microchip on it, so that in the future, if these penguins are sort of microchipped, then this guy will be able to be under that monitoring system, you know, if they come across him, but also to put a 100-day beacon on him. Well, it's not a beacon, it's a transmitter, which they can apparently stitch into his feathers, and that will come off when he molts next, which is January, February next year. So that will run for about 100 days, and that will transmit, you know, twice a day. I think up to the Argus satellite is how they do it, and back down, and we'll run a track on that on the internet to see where he's gone.
Is that the same thing as the tracker that you have on your motorbike when you're travelling?
Yeah, it's basically identical. I mean, we have a spider tracker on the motorbikes, and that's not, I mean, we use it a bit for publicity of where the bikes are when we're overseas, but actually I use it for security. You know, if a bike gets stolen, I can just go to the internet and say it's over in that warehouse over there, so I know where it is. Well, with this, so it's the same type of technology. It'd be great. So it'll be really interesting to see what his track is.
So San Diego's not on the cards anymore?
No, good, eh?
Yeah.
Marvellous.